In football, and really any sport, the process of going from high school to the pros is most often through the combination of superior athleticism, refined skills, work ethic, and luck. Some guys may lean more one way than the other, but regardless, that's a very basic blueprint. Now, when it comes to playing quarterback, there are quarterbacks. Then there are athletes playing quarterback. Let me explain. The stereotypical quarterback many of us grew up with looked like this. A guy who probably couldn't play another position in the NFL, but through the combination of arm talent, aimbot accuracy, strong leadership, and the ability to understand and run an offense to the level of a coach is what separates an NFL quarterback from a college quarterback. On the flip side of the quarterback Venn diagram, there are athletes who play quarterback. In college, it's rather common to see teams place a great athlete at quarterback. They may have average to below average throwing skills, but because of their superior athleticism, they are effective in the run game, basically as another running back, and can often extend plays in the pass game, making the need for refined skills less necessary. But when it comes to NFL standards, most of these guys never make it to the league as a quarterback. Now, as the game's evolved, we see more and more athletes manage to make it at the position. However, they are still few and far between. Most college quarterbacks will never play the position in the NFL. But that doesn't mean some won't make the NFL at another position.
Watched Julian play a little bit. He couldn't throw the ball, but he was hard to tackle and he was very competitive and very tough.
We have seen former college quarterbacks play many different positions in the NFL. And in this video, we will go position by position, looking at some of the guys who successfully played in the league by switching positions. For those of you who remember, I covered this topic many years ago. The video's dated now, and I only covered a handful of players, so I felt like now was a good time to do a refresher on the topic. So anyways, you could argue that the reason the players in this video made it to the NFL was due to versatility, which is a critical trait in all walks of life, even in the bottle we drink out of. That's why I'm happy to talk to you about today's sponsor, Circle. Circle's bottle gives you the luxury of having both water to drink and a delicious flavored beverage in one singular bottle. Here's what I mean. Circle's innovative bottle allows you to flavor your water sip by sip. Go from drinking plain water, then to drinking your new favorite beverage, and then go back to drinking water, all with the turn of a dial. Here's how it works. Number 1, fill. Number 2, fasten. Number 3, dial. And number 4, drink. Flip open and snap back the cap. With over 140 flavors to choose from, there's bound to be many flavors you'll love. It's also great because there are no added colors or dyes. It also has 0 calories and no sugar. I've had this bottle for weeks now, and one of the ways it's useful is when you're on the go and don't want to have to pack a bunch of stuff around. It's definitely great for situations like longer car rides. Circle is a super convenient way to spice up your daily water intake. Plus, it's affordable. Each one of these Circle cartridges contains an equivalent amount of flavor to 6 20-ounce conventional bottles. Results will vary based on the dial setting you use. It can be as low as 50 cents per 20-ounce bottle. Improve your hydration today by clicking the link in the description or the QR code on screen and get up to 35% off your first order. For the sake of organization, I've attempted to categorize all these players by position. The first position we'll talk about is former college quarterbacks that transitioned to receiver. But keep in mind, this section is mostly for guys who played primarily wide receiver throughout their careers. There will be other guys from different sections in this video that also played receiver, as well as other positions. In college, Julian Edelman started 3 years as Kent State's quarterback, setting the school's record for single-season yardage in the process. Here's how a Kent State staff member described him. Upper echelon worker, knows his physical limitations, likes to BS, wants the ball in his hands, football instincts will help him at receiver, has feet to play DB, most competitive guy I've ever coached. The Patriots saw this on tape, and they drafted Edelman in the 7th round purely off his athletic ability.
It was right before the draft, and Bill had 3 beta tapes in his hand. He threw these beta tapes on my desk, and he's like, hey, watch this kid from Kent State, evaluate him, and don't come back and tell me he's a quarterback. So I wrote up that I thought he could be a safety, obviously a slot receiver, and I thought he could play running back too.
I had the epiphany right when I got drafted. It's going to be me, Wes Welker in the slot, Randy Moss on the outside. That did not happen.
What's Randy telling you? Just be bigger and faster than everybody and jump up and catch them like.
He used to call me Edelnut.
Edelnut?
Hey, Edelnut, get my hot tub about 103 and get my Gatorade.
Early on, he was a backup wide receiver and mostly made an impact on special teams. For 4 years, he was known as a solid return man and did just about whatever the team asked him. He even played defensive back on a few occasions, including the 2011 AFC Championship.
And Julian Edelman, how about that?
Then, in 2013, after Wes Welker left in free agency, Edelman started playing more receiver, and he became one of the team's most critical players during the rest of the decade.
Edelman spinning away! New England takes the lead.
In 11 NFL seasons, Edelman became one of the most recognizable players in the NFL due to the Patriots' routine Super Bowl appearances, one of which, Edelman won the game's MVP. Our next player was described by former Florida State head coach Bobby Bowden as the best high school quarterback he had ever seen. That was, of course, Ronald Curry. Curry went on to set many records as North Carolina's signal caller, while also playing for the school's basketball team alongside Julius Peppers. In the 7th round of the 2002 NFL Draft, Curry was selected by the Raiders initially as a quarterback, but started his career as a special teamer, and later made the shift to receiver. He eventually became a surprising star in the pass game, serving as one of the team's top targets in his 3rd season.
Collins to the back of the end zone. Curry, touchdown.
Then 2 years later, Curry led the team in yards. Overall, in 7 seasons, Curry flashed moments of greatness amidst numerous injuries that hampered his potential. Interestingly enough, he is now Josh Allen's quarterback coach. Okay, for the final player in this section, we have Matt Jones. At Arkansas, Jones was something of a legend. He stood at a monstrous 6'6" and 230 pounds. As a freshman, he beat the Eli Manning-led Ole Miss team in a 7-overtime thriller, which had never happened before. Amazingly, he would win another 7-overtime game 2 years later. By the end, despite Arkansas not doing great as a team, Jones left as the SEC's all-time leader in career rushing yards by a quarterback. Amazingly enough, Jones was drafted in the 1st round of the 2005 NFL Draft, and it wasn't to play quarterback, but rather receiver. Considering that this was a position he did not play in college, this was unprecedented for a 1st-round pick. Over the next 4 years, Jones was a rotational receiver that eventually developed into a starter, but was ultimately never that special. After being released in 2009 following substance abuse-related arrests, Jones never played again in the NFL. He wasn't worth the level of hype he received, but it was still impressive that he could produce in the NFL at a position he had never played before. Okay, let's move on to our next section. For these next 2 players, I'd like to label them as the college quarterbacks who became starting pro quarterbacks, who then switched to receiver. First up, we have the OG Marlon Brisco. Brisco played quarterback at Omaha University, and he went on to be selected in the 14th round of the 1968 AFL Draft by the Broncos. From there, he became the first starting African-American quarterback in the AFL, setting franchise rookie records for the Broncos. But the team's head coach decided to go in a different direction at the position the following season. Brisco switched to receiver in 1969 out of necessity, and by his 2nd season playing receiver for the Bills, the dude was an MVP candidate, finishing 2nd in the league in receiving yards. Overall, Brisco played 9 years of pro football, and was highly effective at times throughout his career. Next up, we have former Ohio State standout Terrell Prior. Prior started at quarterback for the Buckeyes for 3 seasons, which had some major highs and lows, ranging from things like winning Rose Bowl MVP to leaving the school due to NCAA investigations. Regardless, this dude was a freak athlete. He stood at 6'4", 240 and ran a 4.3, but his ability as a pure passer was less impressive. He ended up getting selected by the Raiders in the 2011 supplemental draft. By 2013, Terrell Prior had developed into the Raiders' starting quarterback for 9 games. He had some success, but ultimately he wasn't very effective as a passer, and the team went in a different direction following the season. Pryor tried for another year to make it as a quarterback, but it was to no avail. After being cut for a third time, Pryor was at a career crossroads, and he announced he was open to making the switch to receiver.
It's hard to really fall back off and then change it, But I changed it, and now I'm going to pursue this dream.
He ended up signing with the Browns in 2015 and making one catch that season. But this was only the beginning. In 2016, he went off, eclipsing the 1,000-yard mark, pretty much as the team's only good offensive piece. This was actually such a crazy story to me at the time that it became one of the first videos I ever did on this channel back in 2016.
That's 2nd and 4. Kessler completes over the middle. It's Pryor. Pryor still going.
Overall, this stellar 2016 season earned him a nice contract in Washington. And while the success didn't continue at that level, Pryor lasted 2 more years in the NFL. Alright, let's move on to our next category. This is sort of a miscellaneous group due to each of them playing a unique position, as well as 2 guys who mostly just played special teams. Let's focus on those 2 players first, starting with Nick Marshall. Marshall was the Auburn quarterback who famously threw the miracle pass against Georgia back in 2013. Funny enough, he started his career as a corner at Georgia before the team dismissed him due to a violation of team rules. Marshall then became a 2-year starter at Auburn, finishing 2013 as a Maxwell semifinalist. He also helped them win the SEC championship, as well as making it to the national title. In 2015, after initially going to the Senior Bowl as a quarterback, Marshall announced that he would move to his original position, corner, in his attempt to make it to the NFL.
How much time do you spend playing cornerback down at Pensacola training? Was that all you focused on?
That's all I've been focusing on.
After going undrafted, he signed with the Jaguars, where he did make the team's roster as a return man, and went on to play a few seasons mostly as a special teamer. Up next, Joe Webb was a beast at UAB. As a junior, Webb became the first player in NCAA history to pass for more than 2,000 yards and rush for 1,000 yards in consecutive seasons. He was pretty big, standing at just under 6'3" and around 225. Getting ready for the draft, Webb worked out as a receiver at his pro day. But then in the 6th round of the 2010 NFL Draft, the Vikings selected him, initially hoping that he would play quarterback eventually. Then after 3 seasons of very little playtime, Webb started exploring other positions. He eventually became a primary return man and backup receiver for 7 NFL seasons. He even returned kicks for the Panthers in Super Bowl 50. Moving on to the next 4 players, these guys each made moves to random positions, with Scott Frost being the only one of them to play defense. The former Nebraska quarterback is one of the most unique players in this video, and after helping the Cornhuskers claim a share of the 1997 national title, Frost was drafted in the 3rd round to not play quarterback, but rather safety for the Jets. As far as I could find, Nick Marshall and Scott Frost are the only college quarterbacks to actually make an NFL roster as defensive players, although Frost did play a lot more defense in his career than Marshall did. Frost ended up spending most of his career as a backup DB and special teamer for multiple teams, with his best season coming in 2000, where he produced 44 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 interception. Now, he's more well known for his coaching resume, which included coaching Nebraska for 5 seasons, and, more notably, helping resurrect UCF, going undefeated in 2017. The next player here was Michigan standout Jannard Robinson. Robinson initially gained notoriety for not only being supremely gifted as an athlete, but doing it without his shoes tied. And he always did this on purpose, which is something I talked about in a video I did about him years back. Ultimately, he was selected in the 5th round by Jacksonville, with his initial position listed as offensive weapon. For the Jags, Robinson played a bit of special teams and receiver, but primarily developed into a running back. In year 2, he rushed for over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, but ultimately, injuries hampered his NFL career. He lasted 4 seasons. Up next is former quarterback Michael Robinson. As a senior at Penn State, Robinson was dominant, winning Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. Under his leadership, the team won the Big Ten title, and listed at 6'1", 227 entering the NFL Draft. Robinson was selected in the 4th round by the Niners. Coach Mike Nolan loved his attitude and toughness, and ultimately, Robinson became the team's fullback and played special teams for 4 years. Then he landed in Seattle, becoming one of the unsung heroes of their rise. He earned Pro Bowl honors in 2011 as the team's fullback, and served as Marshawn Lynch's lead blocker through 2013. Another huge college quarterback was Virginia Tech's Logan Thomas, who stood at a towering 6'6" and 250 pounds. He was a 3-year starter for the program and went on to be selected in the 4th round of the 2014 draft by the Cardinals to play quarterback. However, after a brutal debut as a quarterback, his career appeared to be short-lived when he was released after just 1 season. After that, he bounced around practice squads for nearly 2 years. Struggling to find a new team, because of his size, Thomas decided to make the switch to tight end. And while he played the rest of the 2016 season out as a practice squad guy, Thomas actually made a roster as a backup tight end in 2017, which included him getting some game reps, appearing in 12 games, and even catching a touchdown.
Wide open, end zone, catch, touchdown, Logan Thomas.
From this point on, Thomas slowly saw his role increase. By 2020, everything came to fruition, as he became one of the team's top targets and the 3rd most targeted tight end in the entire NFL. For 4 years, Thomas remained the team's top tight end before being released. His story is a testament to not giving up. He didn't play in an NFL game for 3 years and had to learn a new position, which ended up saving his career and making him tens of millions. Okay, now finally, we have arrived at our last section of this video. For these college quarterbacks, I have described them as Swiss Army knives in the NFL. Let's start with Brad Smith. The former Missouri star was a first-team All-Big 12 quarterback. He became the 2nd player in Division 1A history to pass for 2,000 yards and rush for 1,000 yards in a season. He went on to be selected in the 4th round of the 2006 NFL Draft as a receiver / running back / quarterback / special teamer. Through 5 seasons, Smith had played all those positions sparingly for the Jets. He made tackles on special teams, caught passes, took end-arounds, and even played wildcat quarterback on occasion, although he just mostly ran the ball when he did. His biggest impact, though, was as a return man. He took 3 kicks to the house over the course of the 2009 and 2010 seasons.
Oh my goodness, does he have another gear?
Overall, Smith never played a massive singular role. He just did a little bit of everything, which helped him last 9 years in the NFL. Next up, we have one of the OGs, Freddy Solomon, aka Fabulous Freddy. The former University of Tampa quarterback was such a great athlete that the Dolphins took him in the 2nd round of the 1975 NFL Draft. Early on, he made an impact as a receiver and return man before finding himself playing for the Niners. In the season finale of 1978, Solomon actually played emergency quarterback, throwing 9 passes.
Got a throw. Sideliner for Harrison, complete. What a catch.
A lot of experienced quarterbacks don't do that this well.
In that game, he produced one of the most unique stat lines in NFL history, throwing for 85 pass yards, catching a 50-yard pass, and rushed for 42 yards and a touchdown. After that, Solomon went on to become one of the great players of the early Niners dynasty, helping the franchise win their first 2 Super Bowls. His impact was felt as a receiver and a dangerous return man. And this is what Jerry Rice said about him. Quote, "Freddie was very influential to me and my career, and taught me about work ethic and professionalism." With a similar start to his career, Brian Mitchell was also used as an emergency quarterback for a game. The former Southwestern Louisiana quarterback had become the first player in NCAA history to pass for more than 5,000 yards and rush for over 3,000 yards in a career. And this was on display in that game he played as a rookie. Mitchell went 3 for 6 for 40 passing yards, while also rushing for a touchdown. After that, Mitchell ended up becoming an incredibly versatile player during his NFL career. He was used as a running back, a receiver, threw passes from time to time,
And it is Brian Mitchell.
and ultimately returned kicks. When it was all said and done, Mitchell finished his incredible 14-year career as the all-time leader in total punt and kick returns, as well as punt and kick return yards. It's pretty wild to think that the NFL's all-time leader in return yardage never even returned a single kick or punt in college. Up next, we have
Antoine Randell.
While at Indiana, Randell became the first player in NCAA Division I history to pass for 40 career touchdowns and score 40 career rushing touchdowns. His head coach Joe Paterno said this about him, quote, "He is just the whole offense. It is scary to watch him. He is so quick that if you don't get on him and you wait for him to pitch the ball, he will take off on you." The former Indiana quarterback was such an impressive football player in college that the Steelers used a second-round pick on him to play a position he did not play at Indiana. For 4 years, Randell became a nice piece in the Steelers' pass game, averaging 40 catches a year during this stretch.
To Randell, touchdown!
He also became a major factor as a returner, taking multiple kicks to the house. But his most defining moment was when he threw the fourth quarter game-clinching touchdown in the Super Bowl to Hines Ward. Interestingly enough, Hines Ward also played quarterback in college for a handful of games. Overall, Randell played 9 years in the NFL, amassing over 4,400 receiving yards and 15 regular season touchdowns. Okay, closing in on the finish line of this video, the first of the final 2 players is Josh Cribbs. Cribbs is the only player in NCAA history to lead his team in both rushing and passing in 4 different seasons. He also was one of the predecessors to Julian Edelman at Kent State. Cribbs went undrafted in 2005, later signing with the Browns, where he made the roster primarily as a kick returner. From that point, he became one of the more prominent special teamers in the NFL, carving out a 10-year career and earning the reputation as one of the best kick returners ever.
This kid is absolutely amazing to me.
In total, he returned 11 kicks, and because of this, made 3 Pro Bowls. Also, at times, Cribbs was used on offense and had success there. In 2009, he rushed for 381 yards with an incredible 6.9 yards per carry. Then in 2011, he was one of the team's leaders in the receiving game, finishing with 518 yards and a few receiving touchdowns. Overall, Cribbs is one of the best players the Browns have had since their return to Cleveland. Now, finally, we have arrived at our final player, and perhaps the most versatile player in league history, Tamm Hill, aka the Mormon Missile. While at BYU, Hill was especially talented, but constantly battled injury after injury. He suffered a horrifying 4 season-ending injuries in 5 years. Despite this, he still wanted to try and play in the NFL. After all, his pre-draft measurables were outstanding. After going undrafted, Tamm Hill signed with the Packers, playing in the preseason, but was released during final cuts. He then signed with the Saints, where he appeared in 5 games on special teams. From there, Hill saw his role evolve, first as a special teamer, then as a backup quarterback and special teamer. In week 3 of his second season, we got our first glimpse of Hill's versatility. He had a few nice kick returns, made a solid tackle on a punt, had 3 carries for 39 yards as a running back, and also came in and played tight end. He continued to have this type of impact during the 2018 season. He even threw a few passes and blocked a punt. From there, Hill became famous around the NFL as the most versatile player in the league. He was used in ways a high school coach might use a great athlete. In 2020 and 2021, Hill started 9 games at quarterback due to injury. And while he wasn't the most effective starting quarterback, he remained one of the most important players over the years on the Saints due to his positionless role. Overall, in 8 seasons to this point, Hill has essentially created a new way to use a player in the NFL. He's accumulated 44 career touchdowns as the team's wildcat quarterback, tight end, running back, backup quarterback, punt team up back, and return man. He is what everyone thought Tim Tebow was going to be when he signed with the Jets and Patriots. Sadly, his 2024 season ended prematurely due to injury. But even at age 34, Tamm Hill, the Mormon Missile, is still one of the most uniquely effective players we have ever seen.
It's Hill. Tamm Hill picks up the Saints' first down, still going. Hill spins to the goal line. He's in. Touchdown.
He's bowling over linebackers, D linemen.